In a landmark decision that will echo through the corridors of power and commerce, the Supreme Court of the United States has struck down the Trump-era tariffs imposed under Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, declaring them unconstitutional. This historic ruling marks a turning point in the nation's approach to international trade policy. The ruling dismantles a trade wall that has shaped global commerce for nearly a decade, ending an era of economic friction and strained alliances. For years, these tariffs have been a source of tension between the U.S. and its trading partners, impacting everything from supply chains to diplomatic relations. These tariffs, once justified as protection for American industry, were a cornerstone of the America First agenda. Now, that foundation has crumbled. Industries that once relied on these protections must now adapt to a new reality, facing both challenges and opportunities in a more open market. The decision forces a national conversation about presidential power, Congress's role in trade, and America's future in the global marketplace. Lawmakers and citizens alike are now debating how trade policy should be shaped moving forward. This isn't just about legal arguments. It's about real-world consequences for workers, farmers, business owners, and consumers. The cost of cars, washing machines, and countless goods will be directly affected. Prices may shift, supply chains could be restructured, and the choices available to American families might change in unexpected ways. As the world processes the news, questions arise. How will this impact economic recovery? Will businesses see relief, or will new uncertainties emerge as global markets adjust? What does it mean for U.S. relations with China and the EU? Could this decision open the door to renewed cooperation or spark new negotiations and rivalries on the world stage? Will it reshape presidential power, setting new limits on executive authority in matters of trade and national security? Understanding the journey to this moment is key to grasping its significance. The legal battles, political debates, and economic shifts that led here have set the stage for a new era. This is a pivotal chapter in American history, with effects that will unfold for years to come. The story of global trade is being rewritten, and its next pages are just beginning. To truly understand today's Supreme Court ruling and its far-reaching implications, we need to trace the story back several years. In 2018, the Trump administration launched a bold and controversial effort to radically reshape U.S. trade policy, aiming to put America first on the global economic stage. The administration believed that decades of unfair trade practices, especially from China, had hollowed out American manufacturing, leading to job losses and economic decline in many communities. To address this, they turned to tariffs as a powerful tool. Invoking Section 232 of the Trade Expansion Act, President Trump imposed a 25% tariff on imported steel and a 10% tariff on aluminum, justifying the move on the grounds of national security and the need to protect critical industries. Critics, including lawmakers and economists, questioned whether these imports truly posed a threat to national security, but the administration pressed forward, undeterred by the controversy. The focus soon shifted to China as the administration expanded tariffs under Section 301 to cover hundreds of billions of dollars in Chinese goods, igniting a full-scale U.S.-China trade war that reverberated across the globe. American companies suddenly faced higher costs, disrupted supply chains, and tough decisions about whether to relocate production or absorb the financial hit, fundamentally altering business strategies. Although a Phase 1 trade deal was signed in 2020, most tariffs remained firmly in place, setting the stage for a wave of legal challenges and ongoing uncertainty. These sweeping policies became a defining feature of the American economic landscape, sparking intense debate among policymakers, business leaders, and economists about their effectiveness and long-term impact. The America First doctrine transformed U.S. economic policy, using tariffs as a protective wall for American industries. In steel towns like Pittsburgh, the tariffs were celebrated. Factories reopened, jobs returned, and profits rose. But for farmers, especially in the Midwest, retaliatory tariffs from China devastated exports and drove prices down. The government offered aid, but many farmers wanted trade, not handouts. For consumers, tariffs meant higher prices on everyday goods, from appliances to backpacks. Businesses relying on imported materials saw profit margins squeezed. The result, a complex economic picture where some industries thrived while others struggled under the weight of new barriers. The interconnected nature of the global economy meant that no sector was left untouched. Legal challenges to the tariffs began almost immediately, with businesses arguing the president had overstepped constitutional authority. The core issue: did Section 232 give the president unlimited power to impose tariffs by invoking national security? Plaintiffs argued this was economic protectionism, not a true security threat, and that Congress alone holds the power to regulate trade. The case wound through the courts for years, with early rulings deferring to presidential authority. But the central question persisted: could Congress delegate such sweeping power without clear limits? Ultimately, the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, setting the stage for a historic decision on the separation of powers. The outcome would determine the future of American trade policy and executive authority. On November 20, 2025, the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 to overturn the Section 232 tariffs. Chief Justice Roberts wrote that while the president has deference in national security, it's not a blank check to reshape the economy. The court found that national security cannot be stretched to cover general economic concerns, reaffirming Congress's constitutional authority over trade. Justice Gorsuch's concurrence highlighted the framers' intent to keep trade and taxation powers with the legislature. The ruling invalidated tariffs on steel and aluminum, breaching the fortress of trade barriers. While tariffs on China under Section 301 remain, the decision sets a precedent for future legal challenges. The message was clear: transformative economic policy requires congressional approval. The immediate effect: steel and aluminum tariffs are gone and the rules of trade have changed. The Supreme Court's decision has immediate economic consequences. With tariffs eliminated, American manufacturers will see lower costs for steel and aluminum, potentially leading to lower prices for cars, appliances, and more. Domestic producers, once shielded from competition, now face global rivals and possible industry shakeups. The ruling is expected to ease tensions with allies, who will likely lift their retaliatory tariffs, benefiting American exporters. For consumers, the end of tariffs means relief from higher prices. Studies estimated tariffs cost households hundreds per year. As supply chains adjust, prices should stabilize or fall, boosting purchasing power. The decision removes a hidden tax on countless goods, putting money back in Americans' pockets. The ripple effects will be felt across industries and at the checkout counter. The Supreme Court's ruling has sparked fierce debate in Washington. Opponents of the tariffs see it as a victory for the rule of law and lower consumer costs. President Biden welcomed the decision as a step toward normalizing trade and strengthening the economy. Supporters of the tariffs, including former President Trump, condemned the ruling as a betrayal of American workers. Globally, allies welcomed the move, seeing it as a chance to reset strained relationships and work together on shared challenges. The decision puts pressure on Congress to clarify the law and redefine the scope of presidential power in trade. Bipartisan efforts are underway to require more congressional oversight before future tariffs can be imposed. The political fight over America's trade future is just beginning. Legal and economic experts are in rare agreement. This ruling marks a true watershed moment in the intersection of law, economics, and government power. The decision is being hailed as a turning point that could reshape how the United States approaches both domestic and international policy for years to come. Dr. Amelia Vance, a leading authority in constitutional law, calls it the most significant non-delegation case in decades. She emphasizes that the ruling reasserts Congress's constitutional authority over trade policy, shifting power away from the executive branch and back to the legislative branch, where it was originally intended to reside. Economist Mark Zandi predicts the decision will help ease price pressures across a range of goods, effectively acting as a tax cut for both businesses and everyday consumers. However, he also warns that the ruling could bring tough times ahead for domestic steel and aluminum producers, who may now face increased competition from imports and shifting market dynamics. Trade law expert Jennifer Hillman says the ruling restores U.S. credibility on the world stage and strengthens the rules-based international system. She notes that allies and trading partners are likely to view the United States as a more predictable and reliable partner moving forward. The decision opens the door for America to re-engage with its allies, rebuild trust, and negotiate from a position of consistency and transparency, rather than unpredictability. Political scientist Dr. David Chen observes that future presidents will now have to think twice before invoking national security as a broad pretext for sweeping economic actions. The ruling sets a precedent that could limit executive power and encourage more careful deliberation. The court's message is clear. Major economic shifts require open legislative debate and genuine consensus, not unilateral action. This reaffirms the importance of checks and balances in the American system. Ultimately, this decision stands as a significant check on executive overreach, one that will shape the direction of U.S. policy and governance for many years to come, ensuring that power remains balanced among the branches of government. The Supreme Court's decision ends an era of economic nationalism and opens a new chapter for American trade. The challenges, unfair competition, a declining manufacturing base, and China's rise, remain. The path forward requires supporting affected workers and industries with investment in retraining, infrastructure, and innovation. It's time to move beyond the old debate of protectionism versus free trade and build a strategy for 21st century competitiveness. Internationally, the U.S. can now rebuild alliances and work with partners to create fair global trade rules. A unified approach is more effective than unilateral tariffs. The Supreme Court has clarified the rules. Now it's up to the American people and their representatives to decide the future. The world is watching.